This is the Vision 79 podcast, where my friend Sander and myself, Mason, discuss recent developments in business and our personal growth. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sanders is 40, mine is 39, and we have a shared vision for success in business and personal life. If you're new to the podcast, welcome in, and if you're a returning listener, welcome back. In either case, we hope you're able to take something away from this that's constructive. We have a long road ahead of us and still have lots to learn. Many people have started from the ground up, but very few of them document their process. We intend to be the first people to document our journey in business from start to finish. So, weekly remarks. Another great meeting. The ball is continuing to roll, and I feel like it's actual traction. Now, it's not just like, it's not like this meeting could have been an email type of thing. These are real valuable meetings that we're having that are good. So that's really great on the business front. It sucks that we can't really talk about it right now, but I'm hoping that in the next 4 to 5 months, we can probably get into more detail with it, right? Especially how the process goes from, starting an LLC and doing profit splitting and et cetera, right?
Yeah.
We can probably do a couple videos into how to do that. It'll be the second LLC that we're making, so we'll have some experience with it, right? I'll start off by following up on a topic that we started on last week, which was I was complaining about how I was sick and not as tough as I used to be because I was avoiding going to the gym and stuff, right? And I have 2 Hormozy quotes that I read in the early part of this week that changed my mindset on it. Because I constantly feel like, okay, I know I can do more and I know that I'm better because I have been before. So why am I not doing it now? There's just a lack of something. It's just not there. And so the first Hormozy quote is, people think there's some complex formula to winning when the most basic one is do what you said you were going to do before it became inconvenient. And I think that one of the main reasons I don't work out a lot is because I just have shit going on. Right. Today's a great example. I woke up, I am going to go to the beach all during the day for the beach party with Pahana, and then I'm going to come here and podcast and bake, and then I have to go home and do meal prep. So there's no time to work out there, right?
Right.
But the second Hormozy quote has really driven this home, which is, if you're not in shape, guess whose fault that is?
Yours.
Exactly. And so that made me think, if I know I'm capable of it because I've done it before, and I have something that I want to do, why am I not doing it? Just do it. Just do it. Right? So I have this new strategy that I'm taking, which is I take a clean pair of socks and I put it on my pillow. And if by the end of the day I haven't done a workout, it doesn't matter if I've showered, if my meal prep is all ready to go, if I'm in my PJs, it doesn't matter. Before I go to sleep that night, I have to put on those shoes and go for a run around the apartment complex. It's probably a mile. I fucking hate running. I really don't want to do that. But I'm going to hold myself accountable by giving myself this punishment if I don't get it done. Subsequently, I want to do it, so I have the cheese, but I don't have a cat. So now the socks are my cat. So every night that I get to take this clean socks off my pillow and put it on my nightstand is a successful day. Every day those socks stay clean is successful. And I started implementing that on Wednesday, and I've worked that every day since. This morning I woke up early and I went for a bike. And it wasn't a big deal. And it never has been a big deal for me because I'm trained to do this. This is what I've done for a decade and a half. And for some reason in the past year, I've just bitched out on it because I didn't want to. But that's one of the personal developments that I've made this week.
Do you want to quickly recap the cat and cheese analogy for new listeners and maybe dive in a little bit to how you're working that into the socks?
Essentially, there's a study that scientists did. I don't know any of the data. You got to look it up on your own. They put a rat in a tube and they attached a spring to its tail to see how hard it was pulling. And from the front of the tube, they wafted in the scent of cheese. And the rat pulled pretty hard. It's a starving rat. And it pulled pretty hard, and the scientists used that as a determinant of the will of the rat, how bad it wanted it. And they repeated the study, wafting in the scent of a cat behind the rat, and it pulled even harder than for the cheese. And what that tells people in business and even in personal growth in life, everything that we do, it's important to have a goal ahead of you that you want to achieve, but it's equally important to have something that you want to run away from. So, that could be anything from rent bills that you can't afford, foreclosure, something like that, child payments if you've got a kid, right? For the cat, in this case, the cat is my run at night because I go to bed at 3 a.m. and I don't want to put on running shoes at 3 a.m., especially if I've already showered. And then the cheese is I want to get fucking jacked.
Right. This is kind of a side tidbit, but I'd be interested to see if you could train the rat to pull harder and harder by having like a reward system with the lack of a cat smell. So it's like if you had the cat smell wafted in from the back and the rat pulled, and when it reached like a certain number that scientists allocated, I don't know, 10 pounds, right? Once it hit 10 pounds, the cat smell would decrease and go away. But then the next time they ran the experiment, that threshold for the cat smell to decrease would be 11 pounds, and then 12 pounds, and then 13 pounds, and to see where the real limit is. Like,
so you're increasing the stakes to increase how hard the rat works?
Yeah, to get it, to like escape the cat.
Interesting.
Like, I wonder, because like, to me, I think about like, okay, well, it's like, we work hard to escape something, but like, if we know we can escape it within a certain time threshold, then we work as hard as we need to complete it within that time threshold. But if the time threshold for us gets smaller and smaller, because let's say you have for example, you have a bill to pay that you can't pay. It's due in 10 days, right? Your mindset is set on on those 10 days. And if you do it within those 10 days, you can do it within those 10 days. So then you're like, okay, cool. If this comes up again, I can do it within 10 days. But if it comes up within 9 days and then within 8 days, you kind of optimize your system to be able to address that issue more quickly and more quickly. And I wonder, this is kind of a far-fetched, but I was just curious if the rat would actually like pull harder than it even thinks it can pull,
In that scenario.
Or can we work harder than we even think we can based on past experiences?
I think that with the work for us, it's not a testament to the will, it's the testament to the knowledge gained. So for the rat, you often smell of a cat, it pulls X hard. You often smell of a cat, it has to pull harder. The rat's getting stronger, so it can pull harder. And similarly, as we achieve our goals and then have a shortened timeline for the next goal, we take with us all the skills that we learned from the first one, and we can do it faster, and we will do it faster. Because as bad as we want this business that we're doing right now, I know that once we have it, we'll enjoy it and we'll cherish it and we'll grow it like a tree. But there's more that we want to do. Work's not over. Work's not done. There's more for us, right? And as we move into that next thing, we have all of the experience from this current business that we can take with us, and the next one's going to happen even faster. If you think about Kahuna, we started that in, I think
October.
That's when our first sales were, right? But the idea, I think, came around in September, right? So from September to January 1st is when we were established as an LLC.
Right.
So you can say that
3 months.
That's the timeline there, right? 3.5 months. So looking at this next project, it's a larger project. We haven't had to find this amount of money before or this amount of support. It's much larger in scale. So I think if you consider the start being the previous podcast, and let's just say that we're a week and a half in right now.
Sure.
If that's what you consider the start to be. Actually, the work has been going on for longer than that, but let's just say a week, right? I think that it's probably going to take 4 or 5 months to get this one done. So maybe even a little bit longer. But all of the components from the first one with writing the LLC and the operating agreement and all of the things that we're familiar with, that's going to be so much easier and allow us to focus on the new challenges with this new business. So even though it might take a little bit more time, the skills that we're familiar with, we can bang out really fast.
Yeah. 100% agree.
So that's what I wanted to open the week with, is I'm done being fucking fat and out of shape.
Yeah. Actually, and that leads sort of into my first question. You mentioned how, the only reason that someone's overweight or out of shape is their own fault, right? And so my first question actually is, do you think that everyone has equal opportunity in the United States to achieve their dreams, and why or why not? What do you love about living in the U.S., and what do you wish was improved about living here?
I think opportunity it's tough. It depends on how you define opportunity, right? Because I think that everybody has two working legs and can climb the staircase, but some people have a lot more stairs to climb. So people born with a silver spoon in their mouth, they're born into wealth. They have good parents who teach them not how to manage the wealth, but how they built it and how they can build their wealth. They have to, I don't know, 1 6-inch step. But then there are people who are born in poverty with parents who are addicted to drugs in a community that idolizes violence and gang activity. And it's so much more difficult because now you have to, essentially the only way out of that is to get good grades, get a job, move into a better neighborhood, into a better facility, surround yourself with better people, right? And if you're looking at it right now, we're looking at go to school, get a job as like, you know, the devil. Like that's the last thing that we want. But that's some people's goal because they're in such a worse place, right?
Yeah.
But I think that everybody has the same ability to do it. I don't think that there's anything stopping people from achieving the levels of success that we're looking to do. It's just more difficult for some people than others.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that there are definitely some people who are born in a really tough spot in life, and then others who are really born in a great spot, you know, have tons of access to wealth, have great parents, have a great childhood, and there's other people who have none of that. But to me, I define opportunity as the chance at something, right? And I think that everyone has the chance or the opportunity to achieve something great. Everyone has the opportunity to become a millionaire. Just because it takes more effort for some doesn't mean that the opportunity doesn't exist for those people. Right? So the opportunity is still there. They just have more stairs to climb.
I think success is when luck and opportunity, or when luck and preparedness meet. So some people are really prepared. They never get lucky. Maybe they don't achieve their goals of being a billionaire, but I'm sure they'll make a living. Right? And, you know, some people get luck after luck after luck, and they keep fucking around with their life and don't have their ducks in a row and can't break through and can't get that. And it's because they're not prepared.
Yeah.
But it varies person to person. I heard a quote the other day, which is just escaping me. I had it 10 seconds ago. Fuck me. Keep talking. I'll remember it. It was about how people are different, and some people have more to climb than others. Fuck me. Keep going.
I feel like I even know the quote you're talking about, but I can't put a finger on it either.
I'll interrupt you when I find it.
Yeah, you're good. You know, I think it's so important that people recognize that the opportunities are there, because then you get stuck in a mindset of victimization.
Let me interrupt you. It's you were talking about how some people are born with this really great situation, right?
Yeah.
And I was listening to a Hormozy podcast segment the other day where he takes calls from listeners, and the listener was talking about how his grandmother got diagnosed with cancer, his grandfather died, his girlfriend who he thought he was going to marry left him, and he had to go do this speech in front of like 1,500 people or something, and like he mustered the courage to do the speech, whatever. Tough spot, right? And he was essentially asking Hormozy, like, how do I go on? And Hormozy was telling him, well, I mean, you're asking me a really easy question because you just did it. You just went and spoke in front of people with all of these things weighing on you. You just did it. You just have to do it again and then again and again and again. And that's a terrible thing. It sucks. But the greatest heroes fight the worst monsters.
Yeah.
Right? So like in the Odyssey, right? Like, you know, the larger the barrier you have to overcome, the greater your story. And that's not always a bad thing. You know, it builds, it sounds shitty, but it builds character. It teaches you a lot of valuable lessons.
I mean, I think a majority, if not all of the people we look up to started from a lower or middle class environment.
Right.
You know, I can't actually name one person right now that started from a wealthy family that I look up to, or at least that I'm aware of. Right?
Lance Stroll.
I mean, but it's like every single podcast person that we listen to, or every single name that comes to mind right now, like they all have that middle class, lower class story.
A lot of them are like, I started with nothing, or some are worse than nothing, and then I built something out of myself.
Right.
And I think it's very common to see people, they go from poverty and make it to middle class and call it success, and then blame rich people for being rich because they were able to take the next step. So, you know, a great example are my parents. You know, they grew up in trailer parks, no money at all. You know, there are some sob stories there, but essentially they didn't have anything, and they got great grades, went to college, got jobs, engineering, all that, made it to middle class, and then stopped. And, you know, I had an awakening in high school when I was looking at going to college, because I was like, college isn't for me. I'm shit at school. I don't want to do it. In the last podcast, we talked about my grades in math class. It's not happening, right? And I had this thought to myself, which is my parents clawed themselves out of the fucking dirt. And who the fuck am I to take the opportunity that they gave me in the great childhood that they gave me and then get a degree in art and, you know, fucking throw it all away? Like, they have built their entire life around giving me a better shot than they had. And now I'm going to go do something that's not going to make any money and I'm not going to be able to provide for myself or them when they're older. You know, an art degree isn't a bad thing. I wanted to be an environmentalist when I was a kid. I wanted to work at the Steve Irwin Zoo. That's not a bad thing. But they have worked hard so that I have the ability to lead a better life than them. And part of that comes with not having to worry about finances. And if I don't have to worry about finances, I can then in turn take care of them when they're older. Right. And a lot of people make it from poverty to middle class, but still hold a grudge against people who have more than them. And that is something that I don't understand. There's another quote, which is, you should only look in your neighbor's bowl to see if they have not enough, not more than you. So don't hate people for having more than you. Just make sure that they're doing okay. And, you know, people have different opinions about that quote, but I really love it because it shows that you shouldn't judge people for something that they have, right? You should only try and help people if they don't have enough.
Right, right. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. To me, what's really dangerous about people claiming that there isn't equal opportunity in the United States is it seems to put an emphasis on the victimization mindset. It's like, I'm the victim here, or this person, this group is a victim here. Right. And that, you know, we've talked about this before in the podcast, but there's numerous studies that have shown that having that mindset and going into situations like a job interview or business pursuits or just, you know, life in general with the mindset that I am the victim can be really toxic and taxing on your progress as an individual.
I just had a great conversation with somebody the other day. They have a friend who is currently out of shape and they're on the track to get better, but they said, you know, I kind of feel badly for them because I'm in better shape than they are and I feel like it's easier for me. And I was like, why do you think it's easier for you? And they were like, well, I have better genetics, you know, I don't have this hormone imbalance, whatever. And I said, stop, tell me about this hormone imbalance. And they were like, well, it makes it more difficult for them to lose weight and it's just tougher for them. And I said, how does it make them more difficult to lose weight? And they were like, well, they metabolize their food slower. And I was like, I have a slow metabolism. Yeah, I'm not overweight, right? The weight loss is really easy. It's just, are you eating more than you're burning?
Yeah.
That's the answer to the question. And they were hemming and hawing about it. And ultimately I said, dude, listen to me. How many people sleep 8 hours a night, work out 3 hours a day, eat in a caloric deficit, and eat in high amounts of protein who are out of weight, who are overweight? And then tell me how many people sleep 5 or 6 hours a night, drink a ton of caffeine, don't eat well, eat in a caloric surplus with low levels of protein, and work out 2 days a week who are out of shape. Right? There's very strong correlation and it's causation. It's both. It's like, that's the facts. That's the way it is. Yeah. You know, it's not easy to do, but the formula works. Yeah. And I'm a fucking living testament to it right now, right? I'm not in the shape that I want to be in, but I can recognize it's because I'm not doing the work that I need to be doing to get to my goals. Right. And that's why there are fucking socks on my pillow every day. But there are so many people who want to just blame a hormone imbalance or blame the price of food or blame their 9 to 5. They don't have the hours to fucking work. There are people who have it harder than you who are doing better. Yeah. And if you're fine with that and if you're okay to just fucking complain, cool. But that is not someone who I want to have in my life. I don't think that's constructive at all. There's nothing constructive about talking about how bad you have it. Yeah. You can recognize that you have it hard, but all I want to hear is what steps you're going to take to improve it.
Yeah, yeah. How can you make it better?
Exactly, because then you can have that same conversation with somebody who's doing great, right? I don't want to hear about how hard you've had it. It doesn't matter. Where are you going from here? What about your future? Another thing that Hormozy talks about is your friends aren't your friends anymore when they only talk about who you used to be in the good old times and not where you're going.
I've heard that one before, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How many people ask you about what you're doing next versus, you know, what you used to do?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I honestly really don't have...
Me neither. I was about to say.
I mean, it's you know, the only people I talk to are you and my girlfriend, and then I update my parents every 3 months with some sort of mix between truth and lie. So it's like,
why do you lie to your parents?
It's not a direct lie. It's more of like a white lie. Like I just leave stuff out that I don't think.
Lie by omission.
Yeah, like I just leave stuff out that I don't think that they would approve of, that would cause them stress, because they're the types of people, or at least my mother's the type of person who puts stress on herself on behalf of others. Like if she thinks I'm doing something that should be stressful, she'll stress out for me, even though I'm not stressed out about it. For example, cats, right? She will be stressed out about me having cats on my behalf, because she'll be like, what are you going to do when you go on vacation? How are you going to take care of them? Like, what if you're in financial dire straits and like you can't feed them? Like she has all these hypothetical scenarios with varying, varying degrees of probability. And it's like, I'm not stressed out about this at all. Like this is not a problem for me, right? And you being stressed out on my behalf does nothing to help the situation at all. So I'm just not going to mention it.
It's funny because my mom does the same exact thing, and I rile her up. She's like, "What about what if you go on vacation? Like, what happened? What if? And then I go, I mean, the cats will probably just die. And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "No, I'm kidding. What if none of that happens? Right. What if I can get a cat sitter? What if nothing happens? What if they never get sick? What if everything's okay? Yeah. What if everything's fine?
Or what if I go on vacation? Just get a cat sitter." Or what if I'm in dire financial straits? I'm sure I could find someone who would take on my cats. If I really couldn't take on my cats, like, I'll find a good home for these cats.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's really not as big of an issue as people make it out to be. And there's so many things that are not as big of an issue, but people make it out to be this whole big thing, because I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that their lives don't have enough, like, real problems, right? So in the small problems, are magnified because they just, our old solids modeling professor talked about this when it's a similar concept, when he said you live in a certain density, right? As you increase the size of your house, if you started in a small apartment that was filled with stuff and you get a house, you're going to fill with stuff because that's the density you live in, right? In the same way, someone who has a very passive lifestyle that might only work a certain amount during the week, or might have a pretty easy job, or doesn't really have anyone to talk to, so they're in their own head all the time, will automatically apply that to someone else and start to be in their own head. Or the small issues that would be big for them that are not big for me start to be big issues for them because they live in that certain stress level or that certain problem level. And so I think that has part to do with it too.
I think that solids modeling professor has a lot of experience in fitting the same density in a smaller space. Anyways, that was good. Anyways, I think you're right, and it's interesting because I wonder if you're on the nose with that, like people don't have big enough problems, or I'm really wondering if people have take a huge issue in any problems. Like if I walk up to somebody, if I walk up to my mom and I walk up to you, and to each of you I go, "Hey, I've got a problem. We have an issue," right? I wonder if her anxiety spikes and yours doesn't, or vice versa. Because when people come to me and they're like, "Dude, we've got a huge fucking issue," right? I am not fazed, right? when I get called to the principal's office or the dean of students, which has happened many times, when they're like, "This is an expellable offense that you've just done," I go, "Hang on, let's talk this out." Like,
let's negotiate.
Let's negotiate. It's gonna be just fine, right? And I'm wondering if that's one of the skills that makes us so versatile in business, is that I'm not fazed by issues. I'm not fazed by problems.
I heard this awesome thing on that.
Yeah, I just told you. It's from me.
Yeah, I know. That was great too. But the Dakota podcast with Joe Rogan, Dakota was talking about advice that Tim Kennedy gave him.
Who is Tim Kennedy?
I don't really know much about him, to be honest. I just remember the name.
Okay.
I haven't researched him. I mean, Joe Rogan and Dakota speak very highly of Tim Kennedy, so I'm kind of interested to see if there's some interviews with him. I'm just curious. I don't know anything about the guy. Don't flame me in the comments. I genuinely don't know anything about the guy. Tim Kennedy said, Dakota was talking to Tim Kennedy, and Dakota was going through a divorce at the time, and it was just really rough, and he was just nitpicking every single thing about this divorce process that he hated. He was just nitpicking and nitpicking and nitpicking. And Tim Kennedy was like, "Hey man, these are inconveniences, because problems are things that you cannot solve. Problems that you can solve are inconveniences. Things like your child getting cancer or one of your parents dying. That's a problem, right? Because you can't do anything about that. But if you can do something about it, it's an inconvenience because you can solve it, and then it's not a problem anymore, right? And so I thought that was really cool, and I was like, shoot, like I have a lot of things that I've identified as problems in the past, but in reality have been inconveniences because I've been able to solve those issues and move on from them. And it's like, if you approach it with the mindset of like, all right, this is just an inconvenience. My bank balance is negative. Like everything is okay. Rather than like, man, this is a huge problem. My bank balance is negative.
Yeah.
Like you're already cooled down when you approach that topic, and your mindset can be more clear to tackle it and solve it.
Yeah.
And so I really like that. It was a really interesting point that he had. I highly recommend to anyone who's interested in a really awesome Marine named Dakota. He's a super cool guy. He served in Afghanistan. Incredible individual. There's an excellent Joe Rogan podcast, the early one. It's 13 something, 13 some number. Really great. And there's another more recent one. Would highly recommend. Really great speaker and has a lot to offer. So
I wonder if that problem solving stems from the like unshakable belief in the future, right? That Hormozy quote where it's like paranoia in the near term.
That's a good tie too.
Because something that I think about really frequently is how fully panicked my parents were when we were getting closer to the Formula SAE competition. And they were like, I don't think you're going to make it. And I was like, we're going to make it. Like, dude, there was not a single bone in my body that thought we weren't going until we sent the email to our advisor saying we're not going.
Yeah.
Like, unshakable faith. And I think about that frequently because my parents were right. We did not make it. And they were able to see that, you know, even beforehand. But they didn't have a reason to. They didn't have any context at all. They had no idea the meetings that we were doing, where the car was at, the progress we had made. They had no reason to. And the reason that's interesting to me is because I can look at it and say, God, my parents were right. They were able to see it and I wasn't. We were never going to get there. But then I can also say, my parents had no idea what the fuck was going on. They just didn't believe in me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true.
And if you don't believe you're going to get there, you never will. And if you believe you're going to get there and you don't, you were wrong. So what?
Yeah.
But if you believe you're going to get there and you get there, you win.
Yeah.
The only way to get there is to believe, and that's to win. And so if you're facing a problem and you believe that it's going to be okay and that you can solve it, you're untouchable.
I would agree. I want to give you the opportunity to run through a couple of your quotes. I think we've done most of my stuff. And then I have the racing thing that I saved from you from last time. So we could close out on that.
I got a bunch of
little tidbit.
One of them is a Dave Chappelle quote. It's Billy's a big picture guy. He talks about how Billy, there's a Dave Chappelle bit where he talks about how Billy wants to be president, but at 16 years old, he gets his girlfriend pregnant, so he's got to take a job at Walmart. He's promoted to assistant manager, and that's great because if he does 4 more years, he could become a manager. In 6 more years, he could become the assistant regional manager, which means that he would have as many as 3 Walmarts under his control. And Billy's a big picture guy. He sees where this is going, so he kills himself. And I think that's fucking hilarious because when I think about it, I'm like, oh, dude, I got good grades in high school. I got good grades in college. I got my diploma. I got a good job. If I do good at this job, I could get 1 promotion every 4 years until I retire. And by the time I retire, maybe I can have a shot at extending into my retirement and being a VP. And if that happens, then maybe I can make $300,000 a year. And if I do that for 200 years, I can afford a ride in a McLaren F1. I'll just kill myself.
Yeah.
So that's another thing is if you don't have that belief that you can achieve your goals, like, dude, I'm not dying of old age without a ride in a McLaren F1. It won't fucking happen, right? I thought that was a great quote.
Dave Chappelle has a really funny bit about someone, like someone in the audience asked him, they were like, what are you going to do if Donald Trump gets elected? This was years back. He's like, what are you going to do if Donald Trump gets elected? And Dave Chappelle was like, probably get a tax cut. And I was like, God damn, that is funny. It was so funny.
I have 2 more. One of them is a Hormozy quote. He says that someone says to me, I work a 9 to 5 and I can't find time to work on my goals. You get 104 days off a year. They're called
speed up, bro. We're working 9 to 5. We're doing a podcast.
He says
we're running a business and another prospect to grow it. Like, dude, get your game on. And we go to the gym when we can. You know, I don't go super often, but, you know, I try to at least go 2 to 3 days a week. It's like, you don't have an excuse if you're working a 9 to 5. Just go after it. Just go for it. You have the time. You just got to prioritize.
He says you get 104 days off a year. They're called weekends. Use them.
Yeah. Facts.
Yeah. And people don't use them at all, right?
No,
and I think part of the reason...
It's a weekend right now.
Yeah, it's Sunday afternoon.
You know, we didn't work this morning, but that's very unusual for us.
I told Tyler when I got to the beach, I said, hey, man, I brought my laptop to get some work done. And he said, I hope it rains. You need a day off.
That's
Stop.
Awesome.
And I said, I'll take a half day, but I'm going to go get to work after this. And then the last Hormozy quote I have here is, if you're never willing to lose, you're never going to win. And that's similar to the unshakable belief. If you don't believe, it's not going to happen. But if you believe, maybe. What's your racing thing?
My racing thing. This is a little subtlety that I think is important. You talked about the Mario Andretti quote with braking, and
Restate
it was
quote.
Essentially like so many racing drivers think that braking is for slowing the car down, but you know, he didn't extend this far into the quote. But you know, the takeaway from that quote should be, it's not about slowing the car down; it's about transferring the weight, right? And you said transferring the weight to the front wheels. But even more specific than that, you can go to transferring the weight off of the rear. And the reason that the wording in that way matters is because it's not just like you're transferring weight to the front to get more front grip, but you're transferring weight off of the rear in the braking so that you can get the car to rotate for you. That's a really important aspect of it. And so the reason I bring this up, not to be a jerk, you know, with wording and stuff, I think it can help you in the mindset way. But when we talk about karting setup, there's different ways to tune the kart. You can either tune it so that, let's say you have understeer, and you go, okay, well, I'm going to add more front grip, right? Because it's understeer. But you also have to think about the fact that your rear might have too much grip. Because if your rear has too much grip, you're going to push the car even if your front has enough grip. Right? So the wording in that sense really can make a difference in terms of setup, because it changes how you approach to set up that go-kart. It's like, okay, am I going to add more front grip, or am I going to take away rear grip? You know, both can induce understeer. So how am I going to tackle it, right? And in the same sense, if you're going into a corner and it's less about transferring the weight to the front to get the car to pitch and more about transferring the weight off of the rear to get the car to rotate, right? It can help your mind look for the rotation rather than the front grip. Because even under 70% or 80% braking potential on the front end, your front end will have enough grip. So it will feel good on the front going into a corner. But you might not be able to effectively transfer the weight off of the rear enough to get the car to rotate. So if you focus on from a rotation perspective, your energy is focused towards, how do I brake enough, long enough, deep enough into this corner to get the car to come around on me. So it's just a mindset thing that I thought could help you, and then anyone who's interested in racing. I think it's a valuable tool. And it's not something that's really talked about effectively. There are a lot of books that do address rotation. And, you know, many great books out there. I recommended a couple on a TikTok short that will come out in the near future. But, you know, it's a valuable distinction, I think. I think it can help.
Yeah. I saw a cool video this morning on a Mika Hakkonen's McLaren from 1997. And they were talking about how with the regs at that time, they were really struggling with getting the balance of the car proper. And so they ultimately designed a car with a system that was banned because the car had 4 pedals. It had gas, brake, and 2 extra brake pedals. And those brake pedals were used in the corner to slow the inside rear tire so that they could get the car to rotate better because it wouldn't turn properly. And so it had 4 brake pedals. And the FAA took one look at that and they were like, absolutely not. This is your only season with this. You're not doing this shit anymore. Cut it out. It was kind of like the dual axis
I'd love
steering
to see a cockpit view
with Mercedes. I have the video. I'll show it to you after this. But it's cool stuff. Yeah.
That's really cool. I've never even heard of that.
No, me neither. I didn't even know it was a thing. And it was really interesting to think about too, because, you know, in karting, you want your right rear tire to lift.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That's the only way you can turn.
Right. And so similarly, big cart, right? Slow that tire down. Right. I thought it was interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I could go on with the GT350 crank that I've learned about this week.
That was a cool one too. I actually have something about an AI designed car for next week as well. I wrote it.
Is it the big race? Did you see the one in Abu Dhabi? There's another video I'll show you. They just had, I don't know who's doing it. I think it's the FIA. No, it's not. It's the United Arab Emirates. They're making essentially Formula E cars driven by AI. And they just had their first actual race with a $250 million or $2.5 million prize. I fucked up.
That's still a lot.
It's a lot of money. Yeah, it was pitiful. The race was horrific, and I never want to see an AI car again.
The scary thing is that those actually might become pretty good within the next 10 years.
Probably, yeah, but I mean, they're bound to replace people. But for the same reason that I think the V6 turbos
in it, the fun of the racing between people to people is the human error involved in its strategy. It's who's tired. It's who's had a long day. Who has this thing going on in their life, and then like the famous Schumacher. Is it Schumacher Alonso overtake? Yeah, where Alonso was like, I knew that Michael would break because he's got family waiting for him at home, which is cold, But it's like that stuff that once you throw AI into a car and have it drive it, it's like,
there's
a really car anymore.
There's a race from I think the early 2000s with Michael Schumacher and a Ferrari, and he was thinking strategy next level so much that an AI would not have thought of it. There's no way an AI would think of this. He had to serve a stop and go penalty in the pit lane, right?
Oh, yeah, this was cool.
So if he won the race, he had to finish like more than 5 seconds ahead of the guy behind him, right? Or something. I can't really remember. Essentially, he crossed the start-finish line in the pit lane and won the race that way.
Yeah.
And like an AI is not going to think about that. And even if there's AI on the track, I don't want to fucking see a robot drive in circles. I don't want to see that. I want to see people in the cars, right? Similarly, I don't want to see a fucking roll hoop. I don't want a halo. I don't want a V6 turbo. I want the V10s. I don't want fucking all automatic transmissions. I want a racing series with the manuals. And I don't want just historics either. Like I don't want to see cars from the 1980s driven every year forever. I want a new car. Could you imagine if Formula One next year they just dropped everything and they were like V10's manuals, go crazy, go nuts, right? No roll hoops. Like the cars that they build would be so different from the ones that we love in the 80s, but we would love them probably to a similar amount because it's got the same spirit behind it.
And it would be with new tech, which would be so sweet.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what I really want to see, and that's why I could give a fuck about the AI racing. But I'm sure that's not a racing quote. That's a
no. This is a car. This is something completely different than that.
Got it.
Yeah, it's very interesting, but excellent podcast.
Cool.
This was great. Really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for tuning in. Check out our TikTok shorts and all the social medias and stuff like that.
Before TikTok gets banned, it's on its way out.
True. We will go to a different platform if it gets banned, but all of the links to the social medias can be found in the link tree in the description of the YouTube channel and the Spotify channel if you're watching this podcast live on one of those platforms. And thank you for tuning in.
Pause. Before we finish, I just want to illustrate that we just said, well, what if TikTok gets banned? Right? Like how your mother or my mother freak out about everything. And without thinking, you were like, we'll go to a different platform.
True.
Working.
It don't matter. Adapt.
Poetry and
it's an inconvenience, not a problem.
Exactly.
So, thank you very much. Appreciate it.